Welcome, Barry!
Thank you, Jeff Fish. We are the Not Ready for E1 players. Today on the show, Field Yates stops by to tell you who's welcomed on Phil Stefania Bell, who's in and who's out for Week 14, first week of the playoffs. Plus, we look back at Monday Night Football. We've got waiver wire pickups for you. But first, Secret Squirrel, today's show will be...
Sunk by an iceberg again? That doesn't seem timely.
Not at all. Feels like we should really update that wheel. From a purely fantasy football perspective, Monday Night Football, actually a nice change of pace for Week 13, right? Fantasy superstars produced like fantasy superstars. What a novel concept. 29 points for Le'Veon Bell, 26 points for A.J. Green, 24 points for Antonio Brown. Nothing for anyone who has those guys on their team to complain about. Like, nothing to complain about? What are you talking about, annoyingly calm Barry? A.J. Green had 14 points taken off the board on a 70-yard touchdown pass for some bogus ticky-tack penalty. Yes, thanks a lot, Walt Coleman, you flag-loving zebra. Nothing to complain about? What is wrong with you? Fair enough. But look, A.J. Green still had 26 fantasy points, Barry. Like, that's a really good number. 26? 26? You know what's better than 26? 40. 40's better than 26. I'm a puppet. Even I can do that math, Barry. He didn't have a single catch in the second half. Really? Really? All right. Well, listen, I can certainly feel how that would have been frustrating for teams that needed 40 points from A.J. Green to make the playoffs or to improve their seeding. But listen, for those of you who got into the playoffs without an absurd amount of points, there are two actual fantasy football takeaways from last night's game. Beyond the fact that, Bell, Brown, and Green are awesome. Despite a tough second half, another good game from Andy Dalton. Red Rifle now with a third straight game with at least 18 fantasy points, right? Since Bill Lazor took over, Dalton is fourth in the NFL in touchdown passes, behind only Tom Brady, Carson Wentz, and Russell Wilson. Dalton, meanwhile, available in more than 60% of leagues. Now, his closing schedule isn't easy, right? Bears at Vikings, Lions at Ravens, but two of the next three are at home, and Dalton, one way or the other, is putting up consistent double-digit fantasy points. I believe he's a viable option in 12-team leagues, especially if Joe Mixon were to miss time, which would likely require Cincinnati to throw even more. Speaking of Mixon, he's officially in the concussion protocol. This means Giovanni Bernard, actually a worthwhile waiver claim. If Mixon were to miss this Sunday, Bernard would get the heavy workload, right? And Bernard is available more than 75% of leagues. 77 yards on 13 carries Monday night. You'd expect him to get heavy volume. Again, Jeremy Hill already out for the year for Cincinnati. Incidentally, the Bengals, they have only one game remaining against a defense that's in the top half of the league in terms of running backs allowed to opposing running backs. Like, it's a good fantasy schedule for running backs coming up for Cincinnati. Giovanni Bernard would be an RB2 or high-end flex option as long as he has the starting gig. Wait, what? You're suggesting I play Giovanni Bernard in the fantasy playoffs? Yes. I'm just saying. Okay. All right. Hey, whoa, hey. All right, I get it. Oh, stop. Now, it's fun when a Gronk smash is done to the football after a touchdown. It's less fun when a Gronk smash is done to a defenseless player. Because the latter happened on Sunday, the NFL has suspended Rob Gronkowski when fantasy players need him the most, the start of the fantasy playoffs. Now, Rob can appeal, of course, but don't hang your hopes on that. You need to be ready to hit the waiver wire. So first off, you shouldn't target anyone on the Patriots, okay? Their current tight ends haven't gotten targets with or without Gronk in the lineup. When Rob missed Week 5 due to injury, Patriots tight ends got one target. In fact, backup Dwayne Allen has 5 catches and 40 yards all season long. No thank you. Instead, you need to head to the waiver wire. So here are 5 guys available in at least 40% span leagues, right? Cameron Brate, he's against the Lions. Ricky Seals playing the Titans. Jules Thomas against the Patriots. Steven Anderson coming off that big game. He gets the 49ers. Rookie David Njoku is against the Packers. Of these, give me Cameron Brate, who with Jameis Winston in the lineup from week through 8 and coming off that 2-touchdown game last Sunday, is a top 5 tight end on a points per game basis. Brate is my favorite. After that, I do like Ricky Jones going against the Titans defense, struggled all year long. Let's talk about flex. And to do that, I'm going to welcome in my muscle-bound friend, Fabrizio, here. He always likes to flex. There you are. Hi, Fabrizio. Listen, if you're in the fantasy playoffs, and I assume the vast majority of you still watching our puppet-based variety show here in December are still in the playoffs, the flex position is what you can use to help you win the whole thing. Look, you obviously have top-tier guys at quarterback, running back, and receiver who are set it and forget it must-starts, or you probably wouldn't have made it this far. But flex can be complicated. Flex can be hard work. Flex can be occasionally very close to you. Listen, you can still find some good bargains on the waiver wire at your flex position. Rex Burkhead, for example, somehow still available in 38% of leagues. If he is out there for some reason, he's my first choice. But assuming he isn't, I suggest these players in this order, now available in over 50% of leagues at the running back position. We start with Giovard. He's going to take over as long as Joe is out. Mike Davis, tough matchup this Jacksonville, but he's the starter for the Seahawks. Peyton Barber, he's looked the best any Tampa running back has looked all year long. Martin may not even get the job back if he's. And Andre Ellington, with injuries to all Texans wide receivers, Ellington got to work in the passing game with his new team. And finally, Kerwin Williams, he's going to have value as Adrian Peterson is out. As for wide receivers, Josh Gordon, available in 34% of leagues. Marquise Lee, still out there in 43%. If either of them are still available, they are my first choice. You need to get them. But if not among wide receivers, my choices of players available more than 50% of leagues are, in the order I'd pick them, Kenny Stills. He has more points this year than Mike, and he's not Matt Moore dependent or Jermaine Kearse. He's been a top 70 wide receiver each of the last 2 weeks. Wallace, he has at least 9 points for straight. Dontrell Inman, double-digit point 3 of the last 4. And D.D. West, 19 targets in the last 2 weeks. Just remember, it's always important to stretch first before flexing. See? Coming up after the break, Stephania Bell is going to be here to break down all the fantasy-relevant injuries that can impact your team in Week 14. She'll show us where it hurts, if you show us the courtesy of watching when we come back.
Welcome back to the Fantasy Show, presented by E-Trade.
We're going to be at Hard Rock Stadium in Miami for our Week 14 Monday Night Football matchup when the Patriots face the Dolphins. Monday Night Countdown kicks off our coverage at 6 p.m. Eastern on ESPN. Time now for Fantasy Frustrations presented by E-Trade. Matty Ice tweets, FFB Payne, I have 2 words, Mike Evans. Wow. Apparently Falcons quarterback Matt Ryan has Bucs receiver Mike Evans in fantasy. What are the odds of that?
Pretty sure it's not that Matty Ice, Matty Berry.
I don't know, Daniel. I trust everything on Twitter. But all right, regardless, yeah, I get it. Hard to trust Mike Evans in fantasy anymore. Drafted as the number 5 wide receiver before the season. He's wide receiver 21 of the year. Hasn't cracked 15 fantasy points since week 7. And then last week, with Jameis Winston back, and against that brutal Packers pass defense, Evans only went 2 for 33. Honestly, you have to keep throwing him out there, but he's nothing more than a wide receiver 2, not the top 5 guy you drafted for the fantasy playoffs. All right, it's Fabrizio and Marcello in the house. You know what that means? It's time for Show Me Where It Hurts with Stephania Bell. All right, Stephania, let's start in Philadelphia where tight end Zach Ertz is banged up. What do we know?
Injured in the third quarter of last Sunday's game, left to be evaluated for a head injury. You know what that means? He didn't return in the concussion protocol, so we'll wait and see how he's able to progress this week. Had a concussion once in 2015, missed 1 game, but we know no 2 are identical, so we'll watch what he does this week.
Yeah, so best wishes for Zach Ertz. If he can't go, Trey Burton would be the guy you want in Philadelphia for him. You and I played each other in the war room this past weekend. You beat me, and one of the reasons why was unfortunately Tyrod Taylor leaving the game early. He was my quarterback in that league. What do we know about the Bills' signal caller?
It was interesting. He got hurt early in the game, but didn't actually leave until quite a bit later. Sean McDermott said on Monday that he has what's called a patellar tendon contusion. So a fancy name for a bruise, but on the big tendon that anchors your quad, the big muscle in your thigh, to your shin bone. And you need that for virtually all your motion, and we know he's a mobile guy. So day to day, he will be the quarterback that starts if he's healthy, but not sure he'll be able to get there in just 1 week.
Yeah, so that is a story we'll watch. If you have Tyrod Taylor, make sure you pick somebody else up just in case. Speaking of quarterbacks, Matthew Stafford got hurt in his last game. Show me where it hurts on Matthew Stafford.
Pretty much all over his throwing hand. I mean, he got stepped on.
Going forward. Last week, sort of a surprise. It seemed like it just cropped out of nowhere. Adrian Peterson. Show me where it hurts on AP.
It's his neck, and that's all they've really said. And it was a surprise when he showed up on the injury report on Wednesday, but then did not practice at all during the week. It seemed people weren't making too much of it, but ultimately he was held out of Week 12. And on Monday, Coach Bruce Arians said, look, he doesn't know if Adrian Peterson is going to play this week, and that decision is entirely up to the medical staff and Adrian Peterson himself. So he's not out of the woods yet for week 13.
No, certainly.
14.
Kerwin Williams filled in admirably for Adrian Peterson last week. If Peterson couldn't go, he would again be the guy. He's available in a bunch of
And he
leagues.
did pretty well despite cracked ribs. So
Kerwin Williams, one of the tougher guys in the NFL. Thank you, Stefania. Thank you, Minions. Coming up next, Field Yates will be here to give players a one-way ticket to Dumpsville. Should Dak Prescott pack his bags and look into purchasing a home with a 30-year mortgage in the greater Dumpsville area? Stay tuned to find out.
Make History is presented by Jim Beam. This is how we make history. How will you make yours?
How indeed. It is playoff time in fantasy football, so let's take a look at the best single-week performances back in Week 14 or later. Since 2010, Jamal Charles ordered fantasy players with 59-point points in Week 15 against the Raiders. Rid of him. So thank you, Field
Thank
Yates.
you.
And thank you, Fred, for all your help.
No problem. Now, if you don't mind, I need to get back to planning on how we're going to dump the entire human race.
That laugh came a little bit too easy to you, Fred. Time now for a blind may. Hey, take a look at these two quarterbacks since Week 10, Field. Check this out.
Okay.
One averaging 2.1 more fantasy points per game, but only rostered in 58% of leagues. Who do you think they are?
I have no idea. On the left is probably not Tom Brady.
Good guess. We'll tell you who after the break.
And in part by Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance. And Sport Clips haircuts. You watch sports, we cut hair. It's perfect.
Time now to reveal the answers to our blind resume secret, Squirrel. Now, the person that's rostered in 100% of leagues, Tom Brady, no surprise. But look who's next to him. Wow. Case Keenum. Don't put two guys in the same sentence together very often, but should. Case Keenum averaging over 20 fantasy points per game since Week 10, and yet still available in 42% of ES leagues. You trusting him in the fantasy playoffs?
I am Matthew Berry.
Hey, speaking of the fantasy playoffs, did you see these tweets from Alvin Kamara and fellow rookie running back Leonard Fournette? So Kamara is responding to this tweet from Leonard Fournette. To all those fantasy owners, stop writing me about points. I run an 11-man box. Y'all think I'm Hercules. Y'all tripping, and a lot of laughing emojis there. You know what? It sort of reminded me of a skit we did a few weeks ago.
Yeah, we did do a skit.
I understand how much you love fantasy football. Hey, I love it too. I've built my whole career around it.
Not to mention, fantasy football has been huge for the popularity of the NFL, drawing more fans to the sport and more viewers to each game.
Yeah, but we're not here today to tell you how great fantasy football is.
We're here to tell you to stop tweeting at players about your fantasy teams. They don't care if you need 7.2 points to win your week.
They're not going to try to put up 3 touchdowns against the Browns just to help your fantasy team.
They're going to score those touchdowns against the Browns because it's fun and easy.
Yep. They're not going to rush back from injury just because you asked them to on Twitter.
Nope, and they don't want to hear that a late kneel down in a game that they actually won costs you your league.
Yeah, cut that out.
Tell them PPR flex option Alvin